The house that rang at midnight was never meant to be noticed. And yet, in the quiet folds of American history, it had been listening long before anyone thought to listen back. Tonight, as the world outside softens and the edges of wakefulness begin to blur, allow me to guide you there. My name is Evelyn Blackwood, and you're listening to Midnight Murmurs Radio, where bedtime stories, sleep stories, and gentle guided sleep meditations drift through the dark like lantern light on a country road. Let your breath slow, your shoulders loosen, and your thoughts settle, because this is a relaxing story meant to carry you safely into rest. Before we step inside the town, take a moment to lie comfortably. Let your body grow heavy against the mattress, as though the earth itself is holding you. Inhale slowly through your nose, counting softly, and release the breath with ease. Feel the day's weight dissolve. There is nothing you need to solve, nowhere you need to go. Tonight, you're only listening. This is a peaceful, calming space, coziest in its stillness, where even mysteries speak in whispers. Now imagine a small town nestled between low hills and long-forgotten rail lines. The town does not appear on most maps anymore. Though once it thrived. Wooden storefronts line a single main street, their windows dark but intact, as if waiting for morning that never quite arrives. A clock tower stands at the center, its hands forever frozen just before midnight. Wind moves gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of old leaves and chimney ash. Everything here seems pause, held in a delicate balance between memory and forgetting. At the edge of town sits the house. It is not grand, not particularly old by American standards. Built some time after the Civil War, when families moved west, chasing land, hope, and quieter lives. Its paint has faded to a soft gray, weathered by decades of snow, rain, and unspoken grief. The porch sags slightly, but the front door remains sturdy, framed by a brass bell mounted above the threshold. That bell is small, unassuming, the kind once used to announce guests before electricity reached places like this. And yet, every night, without fail, it rings. No one ever stands at the door. The townspeople learned this slowly, over years. At first, it was dismissed as wind or faulty metal expanding in the cold. But the ringing always came at the same time. Midnight. One clear note, followed by a second, softer echo, as though the house itself were answering. Dogs would stir but not bark. Lights would flicker briefly, then settle. And by morning, silence would return, leaving only questions that no one seemed eager to voice. You walk now along the gravel road leading toward the house. Each step feels gentle, muffled, as if sound itself has learned to tread carefully here. Crickets sang, somewhere beyond the trees. Steady and soothing, the moon hangs low, bathing the yard in silver light. There is no fear in this place, only a sense of deep, old patience, as though the night has waited a very long time for someone to listen. As you approach the porch, notice how calm your breathing has become. The house does not feel hostile. It feels tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of holding on to a story that has nowhere left to go. The windows reflect the moon but reveal nothing inside. Curtains hang motionless, The bell above the door gleams faintly, untouched, perfectly still. Long ago, before highways and headlines, this house belonged to a family whose name faded from records after a single winter. Back then, the town depended on seasonal festivals to mark time. Harvest, dances, lantern walks. Even Columbus Day was observed here, not with parades, but with quiet gatherings where elders spoke of arrival, loss, and the cost of claiming land that already remembered other footsteps. History was not erased here. It was simply folded away, like a letter never mailed. On one such night, during a celebration meant to honor beginnings, something ended instead. No official report was filed. No crime recorded. Only the bell remained, installed shortly after, as if someone hoped sound might summon forgiveness, or at least acknowledgement. Midnight became the hour when the past felt closest, when the house remembered what the town had chosen to forget. The air cools as the clock towers frozen. Hands approach their eternal moment. You feel no urgency, no need to act. You are only here to witness, gently, safely. Somewhere deep within the walls, wood creaks softly, settling into itself. The house breathes, slow and steady, matching your own rhythm now. And as the minute hand would have touched 12, the bell rings. Not loudly, not sharply, just enough to be heard by those who are listening. As this first chapter draws to a close, allow the image to soften. Let the sound fade into the distance. You are safe, warm, and drifting deeper into rest. The story will continue, but for now, simply breathe and let the night hold you. After the bell fades, the night does not rush to fill the silence. Instead, it lingers, stretching the quiet like a long, slow breath. You remain standing on the porch, feeling the calm settle deeper into your body, as though the stillness itself has weight. This is not a place that startles. It invites, and as your thoughts drift more softly now, the house begins to reveal itself, not through sight, but through memory. Inside, the air is cool and faintly scented with old wood and extinguished candles. Floorboards remember footsteps long gone, but they do not creak beneath you. The house seems to recognize the difference between those who arrive with fear and those who arrive simply to listen. Somewhere beyond the walls, the town sleeps, unaware, or perhaps choosing to be unaware of what stirs at midnight. This house was once full of ordinary sounds, laughter drifting through open windows in summer, the steady rhythm of boots returning home after long days of work. On festival nights, lantern lights spilled across the porch, glowing amber against the dark. These were not wealthy people, nor were they important by any historical measure. They were simply present, rooted in this place, carrying with them the quiet burdens of their time. In those years, the town believed deeply in beginnings. Each season brought a reason to gather, to remind themselves why they stayed. Columbus Day, especially, held a complicated reverence, not a celebration of conquest here, but a hushed acknowledgement of arrival, of what it meant to come somewhere and never truly leave. Elders spoke carefully, their words wrapped in pauses, aware that history, when spoken aloud, has a way of listening back. On the night the bell first rang, the town was gathered just beyond the hill. Lanterns lined the path, glowing softly like fireflies trapped in glass. Music played low and slow, meant more for remembering than dancing. The house remained dark, its windows unlit, its door closed. No one noticed when the bell sounded for the first time. It blended too easily with the night. It was only later, when the hour became predictable, that people began to listen. You move now through the front room, where furniture still sits, as if waiting for its owners to return. A chair, angled toward the hearth, a small table near the window, its surface worn smooth by time and touch. Everything feels paused, not abandoned. The house does not mourn. It preserves. Your breathing remains slow, steady. With a hutch step, your body grows heavier, more relaxed, as though the story itself is guiding you downward, deeper into rest. This is a sleep story, a gentle bedtime story, meant to cradle you between waking and dreaming, where truths soften and edges blur. In the hallway, photographs hang slightly askew, faces gaze outward, expressions neutral, familiar, human. They are not watching you. They are waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for the simple act of being remembered. The bell above the door was never meant as a warning. It was a call, a ritual born of quiet desperation, installed by someone who believed that sound might bridge what silence had broken. Midnight became sacred in this house, the moment when the past stirred just enough to breathe. The bell rang not to announce arrival, but to mark presence. To say, once more, we are still here. Outside, the wind passes gently through bare branches, brushing against the siding with a sound like distant waves. It is soothing, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You feel safe within the walls, wrapped in the steady hush of the night. There is no urgency here, no demand for answers, only the slow unfolding of a truth that has waited patiently for years. The town, for its part, learned to live around the sound. Windows were shut more tightly at night. Conversations drifted away from the house. Children were told stories that softened the edges, turning mystery into folklore. It was easier that way. Easier than admitting that forgetting has consequences. That silence can echo longer than words. As the night deepens, you sense the house listening in return to your breath, to your calm presence, to the way you have come without fear, without expectation. The bell does not ring again, not yet. It waits, as it always does, for the moment when listening becomes remembering. The clock tower in town remains frozen, but here time feels fluid, gentle, unbound. You feel yourself drifting, the images growing softer, warmer. The house fades slightly at the edges, like a dream that knows it will be continued. And as this part of the story settles, allow yourself to sink deeper into the quiet. Let the night carry you gently forward. The bell will ring again, and when it does, more will be revealed. For now, rest in the calm and drift slowly toward sleep. Asterisk as the night deepens, the house begins to remember more clearly, not in sharp images or sudden revelations, but in sensations that drift gently through the air, like dust caught in moonlight. You feel them rather than see them, a subtle change in temperature, a soft pressure, as though the walls are leaning inward, not to trap you, but to listen more closely. Long before the bell became part of the house, before midnight took on its quiet significance, the family here lived with a careful sense of balance. They understood that the town's peace depended on what remained unspoken in small American towns like this one. Survival often meant learning which truths could be carried openly and which must be folded away, tucked behind polite smiles and seasonal rituals. The house was built during a time of transition, when the country itself was unsure of what it was becoming. Railroads stretched farther west, newspapers carried stories of progress, and yet, beneath it all, communities like this one moved at a slower rhythm. People arrived seeking land and belonging, but they also inherited the weight of histories already rooted in the soil. The land remembered, even when people tried not to. Inside the kitchen, a single chair rests near the window. It was here that someone once waited, night after night, listening for footsteps that never came. Meals grew colder on the table, lamps burned low. The quiet stretched longer with each passing evening, until silence itself felt like a decision that had been made on their behalf. Your breathing remains slow, and even now, each inhale draws you deeper into the story, and each exhale releases another layer of tension. This is a relaxing story, meant to guide you gently, never to pull or push. You are drifting, and the house drifts with you. On the night everything shifted, the town celebrated as it always did. Lanterns glowed. Voices murmured. There was comfort in routine. Columbus Day, here, was marked with reflection rather than fanfare. Elders spoke of journeys and arrivals, of what it meant to claim a place, while knowing it could never fully be owned. There was a heaviness beneath the words, but no one pressed too hard against it. Someone from the house did not attend that night. For the first time, the door remained closed, the windows dark. A choice was made in that quiet, one that rippled outward in ways no one fully understood at the time. Absence has a way of speaking louder than presence, especially in places where everyone is known. As midnight approached, the house felt the weight of that absence. The air inside grew still, holding its breath. It was then that the bell was placed above the door, not hastily, but carefully, with hands that trembled slightly. The intention was simple. If sound could mark arrival, perhaps it could also mark loss. Perhaps it could keep something from slipping away entirely. The first ring went unnoticed, but the house noticed. Over time, midnight became a threshold, a moment when the boundary between then and now thinned just enough for memory to pass through. The bell rang not in anger, nor in warning, but in persistence, a gentle insistence that something unfinished remained. You sense this now as you stand near the doorway. The bell hangs motionless, yet it feels alive with stored moments. It has absorbed years of listening. Each night, it waits for someone who will not turn away, who will hear the sound and allow it to mean something. Outside, The town continues its quiet agreement with forgetfulness. Buildings age, names fade from signs and records. Stories are softened, then simplified, until they are safe enough to tell children at bedtime. But the house does not simplify. It holds, patiently, completely. Your eyelids feel heavier now, the edges of the room blurring slightly as your body sinks deeper into rest. This is the space where bedtime stories become something more than entertainment. They become a bridge, carrying you across waking thought into the calm, drifting landscape of sleep. The bell does not ring again tonight, not yet. It is waiting for the right kind of listening, and as you float gently in the hush, the house seems to sense your presence, your stillness, your willingness to remain. The story has more to tell. The night is not finished, but for now, let the images soften. Let the weight of history settle into something warm and distant. You are safe. You are eld. And as this part of the story fades, allow yourself to drift even deeper, carried by the quiet toward peaceful sleep. Asterisk. The house does not introduce its people all at once. It reveals them slowly, the way the night reveals stars, one faint light at a time. As you drift deeper into the calm, a presence begins to form within the stillness, not as a figure, but as a feeling that settles gently beside you. Someone who waited, someone who listened long before the bell ever rang. She lived here most of her life, though the town remembers her only vaguely now. Not because she did anything remarkable, but because she learned to live quietly, carefully, in a place where standing out could invite questions no one wished to answer. Her days followed simple patterns: morning light through the kitchen window, afternoons spent tending a small garden behind the house, evenings near the hearth, where the ticking of the clock kept her company. She believed in rituals, not grand ones, but the small, steady kind, lighting a candle at dusk, sweeping the porch before nightfall, pausing at the door each time she crossed the threshold, as though acknowledging the space between inside and out. These habits grounded her, kept the world predictable, and yet predictability is fragile. It only takes one absence to fracture it. The person she waited for had promised to return before winter fully settled in. A simple promise, spoken easily, without ceremony. But as leaves fell and frost traced the windows, the waiting stretched longer than expected. Letters stopped arriving. The town offered explanations, then silence. And so she turned to listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything that might confirm the promise had not dissolved into memory. Your breathing remains slow, and the story unfolds at the same pace, careful not to disturb your rest. This is a calming sleep story, meant to carry weight without heaviness, mystery without fear. When the bell was installed, it was not an act of superstition. It was an act of hope, a belief that sound could mark a boundary, that it could call something back from the edges of forgetting. She placed it above the door herself, fingers lingering on the cool metal before stepping inside. Midnight was chosen not for drama, but for stillness. It was the hour when the town slept deepest, when the world was quiet enough to hear what had been lost. The bell rang for the first time while she sat alone by the fire, She did not rise to answer it. She already knew no one stood outside. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. In that moment, the house learned its purpose. It was no longer just shelter. It became a vessel for waiting. Years passed. The town changed in small ways. Shops closed, roads shifted. New families arrived who never learned the full story, but the house remained, and the bell continued its nightly call. Some said it was a reminder of grief. Others called it a curse. Few considered that it might be something gentler. A conversation. A question asked over and over, patiently, into the dark. You sense her presence now not as sorrow, but as endure. She did not haunt the house in the way stories often suggest. She stayed because staying was what she had always done. Her memory folded into the walls, the floorboards, the quiet spaces where sound soft. Midnight became her hour not because she feared the dark, but because she trusted it to listen. Outside, snow begins to fall lightly, though no season seems fixed here. The flakes drift slowly, dissolving as they touch the ground. The house watches, unmoving. Its windows dim but attentive. The bell remains still, waiting for the moment that always comes. As the minute hand approaches 12, you feel no tension, only a deepening calm. The bell rings once, then again. Each note soft, measured, almost tender. It is not calling you, it is calling memory itself, asking gently if it is ready to be acknowledged. The sound fades, leaving behind a warmth that spreads through the room. Through you, your body feels heavy now, anchored comfortably in rest. The images soften, edges dissolving into shadow. You do not need to understand everything. Understanding is not required here. Presence is enough. The house settles. The night exhales, and somewhere within the walls, the waiting continues. Not as longing, but as quiet acceptance, as this part of the story draws to a close. Allow yourself to drift further, carried by the steady rhythm of breath and sound. The bell has spoken, the night has listened, and you, gently, are drifting closer to sleep. Asterisk, the town did not turn away from the house all at once. Forgetting, like sleep, arrived gradually. At first, people listened when the bell rang. They paused mid-thought, mid-breath, wondering if perhaps this time someone truly stood on the porch. But repetition dulls even the sharpest curiosity. Night after night, the sound returned, unchanged, and slowly, listening became tiring. Windows were closed more firmly. Conversations shifted to safer subjects. The bell was no longer discussed openly, only referenced obliquely, folded into phrases, like that place, or, you know, the one. Silence became a shared agreement, an unspoken pact that allowed the town to move forward without looking back. Inside the house, the waiting transformed. What had once been hope softened into routine. Midnight came, the bell rung, and the sounds settled into the walls like breath. Settling into lungs, the woman no longer marked the days by calendars or letters. She marked them by sound. One ring meant another day had passed. Another moment acknowledged. Another night survived. You feel this rhythm now, steady and unhurried, mirroring your own breathing. This is the heart of a gentle sleep story, where repetition becomes comfort and predictability becomes rest. The bell does not disrupt the night. It defines Italiano. The town's festivals continued, though they grew smaller, quieter. Lantern walks shortened. Speeches were trimmed of reflection. Columbus Day lost its pauses, its careful wording, becoming a simple marker on the calendar rather than a moment of reckoning. History, once spoken cautiously, slipped into abstraction. Easier to celebrate arrival than to sit with consequence. And yet, the house remembered that, remembered the night when voices were loud beyond the hill and absent within its walls. It remembered the choice not to attend, not to explain, not to ask. Choices live impressions, even when no one witnesses them. The bell rang each night as a gentle reminder that something unresolved remained, not accusing, simply present. Asterisk. Years passed. The woman grew older, slower. Her steps soft. Her listening deepened. When she could no longer rise Sally from her chair, she listened from where she sat. When even that became difficult, she listened lying down, eyes closed, breath shallow but steady. The bell rang, and she answered not with movement, but with memory. Eventually, the house learned to ring the bell without her hands upon it, not through force, nor through anger, but through repetition. Through habit layered upon habit, memory pressed into matter. The sound became part of the structure, as natural as the settling of wood or the sigh of wind through eaves. Midnight arrived, and the bell responded as it always had. The town noticed this change, though few spoke of it. Some claimed the sound had grown softer. Others insisted it was exactly the same. What mattered was that it continued. The bell outlived its purpose, or perhaps fulfilled it too well. You feel a sense of gentle inevitability now. Not sadness, but understanding. This is how places carry history when people cannot. This is how quiet consequences endure. The house did not demand remembrance. It offered it patiently, night after night. As the woman's presence faded, the house did not empty. It held what remained carefully. Her listening became its listening. Her waiting became its waiting. Midnight arrived, and the bell rang, not in mourning, but in continuity. Outside, seasons passed, unnoticed. Snow fell and melted, leaves gathered and scattered. The town aged, shifted, adapted. New voices filled old spaces, unaware of what lingered beneath. Only the bell persisted, threading the past gently into the present. Your body feels heavy now, settled deeply into rest. Thoughts drift like fog, unformed, the story wraps around you, not to keep you awake, but to guide you downward, toward sleep. This is a peaceful, calming space, where even unresolved things can rest. The bell rings once more, softer than before, almost tender. It does not ask to be answered. It asks only to be heard. And as the sound fades, Allow yourself to fade with it, sinking into the quiet that follows. The night holds you. The howl listens, and you are drifting safely, gently towards sleep. By the time the town fully accepted the bell as part of the night, it had already woven itself into the rhythm of sleep. Midnight arrived. The sound rang softly, and life continued without pause. What once unsettled now soothed. What once demanded attention became background. Like the ticking of a clock, no one noticed anymore. This is how quiet consequences settle in, not with force, but with familiarity. The house stood unchanged as years slipped past it. Paint faded further, wood softened under weather and time, yet something within remained steady, attentive. The bell never rusted. It never loosened. Each night, it rang with the same measured patience, as though marking not time, but presence. You sense now that the house does not ring the bell out of loneliness. Loneliness implies wanting something else. This house wants nothing. It simply remembers. It holds the shape of waiting long after waiting is necessary. In doing so, it becomes something rare, a place where memory is allowed to exist without explanation. The town, in contrast, learned to move on. Children grew up hearing the sound and never questioning it. For them, the bell was just another night noise, like wind or distant trains. Stories were shortened, softened, then lost entirely. What remained was a feeling no one could name, a faint unease, a sense that something important had been left unfinished. But unease, too, can become familiar. As you drift deeper into rest, notice how your body responds to this realization. There is no tension, only a gentle acceptance. This is not a story of fear. It is a story of what happens when listening stops and how places continue listening anyway. On rare nights, someone passing through the town would pause when the bell rang. They would feel it in their chest, a subtle pull toward the house at the edge of the road. Most did nothing. A few slowed their steps. None stayed long enough to ask questions. Their house remained patient. Tonight is no different. Midnight arrives once more. The air grows. Still, the bell rings. And somewhere within the sound, layers of time overlap. A woman listening by the fire. A promise never fulfilled. A town choosing comfort over truth. All of it exists together, not loudly, not urgently, but completely. You do not need to hold these images tightly. Let them soften. Let them drift. This is a bedtime story, a relaxing sleep story meant to guide you gently away from wakefulness, not pull you deeper into thought. The mystery does not need solving. It only needs space. As the sound fades, the house settles again into quiet watchfulness. It has done what it always does. It has Hannah. Remember, that is enough, and now, so have you. Doug, as this chapter comes to an end, allow yourself to rest fully in the calm that follows. Your breathing is slow. Your thoughts are distant. The night feels wide and safe around you. If you find comfort in stories like this, whispered gently through the dark, you are always welcome to return. Consider subscribing to Midnight Murmurs Radio or offering your quiet support. So these peaceful, coziest bedtime stories and guided sleep meditations can continue to drift into the night. For now, there is nothing more you need to do. That as the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The second chapter begins not with the sound of the bell, but with someone who finally pauses to hear it in the quiet language of small towns. This moment is rare. Most people pass through places like this without listening, carrying their own noise with them. But tonight, as the air cools and midnight approaches once more, someone arrives who does not rush, someone who lingers at the edge of the road, where the gravel softens and the dark grows deeper. You feel this arrival gently, like a shift in the night's breathing. The house feels it too. She comes from elsewhere, from a town louder than this one, where nights are filled with engines and light. She does not come searching for answers. She comes seeking rest. A temporary escape from a life that has grown heavy with unspoken things. She finds the town by accident, guided not by maps, but by exhaustion. As she steps from her car, the stillness surprises her. No hum of traffic, no distant sirens. Only wind in the trees and the faint creak of old wood cooling after days' heat. She inhales slowly, without realizing she has been holding her breath for weeks. This place, she senses, is quieter than she expected, quieter than anywhere she has been in a long time. You remain drifting comfortably now, your body heavy, your thoughts soft. The story unfolds slowly, deliberately, careful not to pull you from rest. This is a guided sleep, meditation disguised as memory, inviting you to observe without effort. The woman walks along the road, drawn by the silhouette of the house at the edge of town. It does not call to her. It does not glow. It simply exists, steady and unmoving beneath the moon. The bell above the door is barely visible, catching just enough light to reveal its presence. She does not know its history. She does not know about the waiting, or the forgetting, or the way the town learned to live around the sound. All she knows is that something about the house feels honest. Una dormet, untouched by explanation. Midnight nears. Inside the house, the air stirs, not in anticipation, but in recognition. The bell has rung 4 decades into empty listening. Tonight, it senses something different. Not urgency, not demand, not simply attention. When the bell rings, the sound reaches her before thought does. It settles into her chest, gentle but unmistakable. She stops walking. The night seems to pause with her. No dogs bark, no lights flicker. The sound is allowed to exist alone. She does not assume danger. She does not imagine ghosts. Instead, she feels an unexpected calm, as though the sound has named something she has carried quietly for a long time. The feeling of being unheard, of waiting without knowing what for. You feel this resonance too, though softly, distantly, like a memory brushing past the edge of sleep. The story does not ask you to follow closely. It only asks that you remain. The woman approaches the porch slowly. The boards do not creak. The house does not resist. She stands beneath the bell, looking up at it, noticing its age, its simplicity. It is not decorative, it is practical, purposeful, a tool meant to bridge distance. She does not touch it. The door remains closed. The bell does not ring again. Midnight passes, and the night exhales. She feels no disappointment, no fear. No fear, only a quiet certainty that she has arrived at the right place, even if she does not yet know why. Inside, the house listens, that it listens to her breathing, uneven at first, then slower. It listens to the way she does not rush away. It listens to the silence she carries, similar to the silence it has held for so long. The town sleeps on, unaware that something has shifted, not dramatically, not visibly, but enough to matter. For the first time in years, the bell has been heard by someone willing to remain present after the sound fades. This is how change begins here, not with revelation, but with attention. As your own breathing slows further, allow the image to soften. The woman remains on the porch, wrapped in moonlight and quiet. The house stands patient, as it always has. Midnight has passed, but the listening continues. And as this new chapter settles around you, allow yourself to drift deeper into rest. The story is unfolding gently now, and you are safe to let it carry you forward, one calm breath at a time. She does not leave when the sound fades. That is the first difference. The house notices. Most people pause, listen, and then move on, carrying the bell away as a curiosity, a story to forget by morning. Ser remains. The porch boards cool beneath her feet as midnight slips quietly into after midnight, a softer hour where the world feels less certain and more honest. The night breathes around her. Wind settles, leaves grow still. Even the distant hum of the town seems to retreat, as though granting space for something long held to rise gently to the surface. The house listens, attentive but unhurried, recognizing in her a familiar stillness. Inside, rooms stir with memory, not sharply, not painfully, but like embers warming after years beneath ash. The front room remembers lamplight. The hallway recalls measured footsteps. The kitchen holds the echo of quiet meals and patient waiting. None of this presses forward. It simply exists, layered and calm. She rests a hand lightly against the door, feeling the grain of the wood beneath her palm. It is solid, grounded, real. This small act of contact feels like a question asked without words. The house does not answer aloud. It never has. But something within shifts, aligning itself to her presence. Your breathing remains slow, deep, effortless now. The story moves at the same pace, inviting you to drift alongside it. This is a relaxing sleep story, a gentle bedtime story meant to cradle thought rather than sharpen it. She does not enter the house that night. Instead, she sits on the porch steps, wrapped in her coat, gazing toward the darkened road. She listens, not for the bell, but for herself, for the quiet beneath her thoughts, the place where long-held tension loosens. The house recognizes this listening. It has known it before. Time stretches, unmeasured. Midnight passes completely. Somewhere beyond the hills, a train horn sounds faintly, then fades. The bell remains still, its task for the night complete. It has been heard. That is Inug. When she finally rises to leave, the house does not feel abandoned. It feels acknowledged. The difference is subtle, but profound. A memory has been touched gently, without demand. That kind of contact lingers. The following night she returns, not out of obligation, not out of fear, simply because the quiet here feels restorative. She parks farther down the road this time, walking slowly, deliberately, as though she does not wish to disturb the night. The town remains unaware, asleep within its familiar patterns. Inside the house, anticipation is not the right word. Expectation suggests desire. The house desires nothing, but it does recognize rhythm. Recognition settles into the walls. Like warmth, midnight approaches again. The air grows still. The bell rings. This time, she exhales when she hears it. A soft release she does not consciously notice. The sound feels less like interruption and more like punctuation, marking a moment she has allowed herself to pause. She does not flinch. She does not step back. She simply listens. You feel this calm too, carried gently by the rhythm of breath and sound. The story does not pull you forward. It allows you to sink. She steps closer to the door, not to open it, but to stand beneath the bell once more. The metal is cool above her, untouched. She senses that the sound is not meant to summon, only to remain. To say, quietly, this place is still here. Over the next nights, a pattern forms. Se comes, se listens, se leaves. No conversation passes between her and the town. No explanation is offered. The house learns her presence the way it learned the woman before her. Not through words, but through consistency. That memory responds to this. Small things begin to surface. A scent of extinguished candles. A warmth near the hearth that has no source. The faintest impression of someone sitting nearby, not watching, not asking, simply sharing the quiet. None of this frightens her. It feels familiar in a way she cannot name. The house does not ring the bell more loudly. It does not change its behavior, but something within it softens. The waiting that once defined it loosens its hold, hoosts slightly. Listening is no longer one-sided. Your body feels heavy now, settled deeply into rest. Thoughts drift without shape. Images blur at the edges, becoming sensation rather than story. This is where sleep draws close. The woman leaves once more, unaware that her presence has begun a shift that cannot be undone. The house remains, listening into the night, holding memory gently, knowing that for the first time in many years, it is not alone in that task. And as this part of the story fades, allow yourself to drift with it. The bell has been heard again. The night has received it, and you, quietly, are carried deeper into peaceful sleep. On the fourth night, the house remembers her voice before she ever speaks. It is not the sound of words, that stirs the memory, but the way her breath changes as she steps onto the porch, the subtle pause she takes before sitting, the quiet reverence with which she inhabits the space. These small details settle into the walls. Familiona, welcomed without resistance. The bell does not ring immediately. Midnight arrives, softly, like snowfall. The sky is low and clouded, holding the moon in careful concealment. The street lamp at the corner hums faintly, its light trembling against the fog that has begun to drift through town. The house waits, unhurried. She sits on the steps, hands folded loosely in her lap, eyes half closed. There is no expectation in her posture, only this, more than anything, allows the memory to rise. Inside the house, the hallway grows warmer. Floorboards. Remember weight, not hers, but another's. A woman's steps, measured and slow, moving from room to room as if counting time rather than distance. The memory is not sharp. It does not replay. It simply exists, overlapping gently with the present. You feel this overlap too, a soft blending of now and then, where boundaries thin and thought loosens. This is the space where sleep and story intertwine. The bell rings. It is quieter than before. Les acal. More a breath. The sound moves outward and then inward, settling rather than echoing. She opens her eyes, not startled, not surprised. Her chest rises with a slow inhale, then falls again. For the first time, she speaks. Not loudly, not toward the house, just a sentence released into the night as though spoken to herself. She says that she likes how calm it feels here, that the silence listens back. The words drift into the open doorway, absorbed by wood and plaster and memory. The house does not answer, but something shifts all the same. The memory deepens. The woman who once lived here stands not in form, but in presence. She is not visible. She does not linger in corners or shadows. She exists as intention, as habit, as a rhythm the house has never forgotten. She remembers standing at this same door, listening for a sound she believed would come one night and change everything. It never did. Instead, the bell became her companion. She rang it not to summon others, but to remind herself that time was still moving, that night still passed, that waiting did not mean vanishing. Over years, the sound became softer, until it was barely a sound at all. Now, hearing it again, something releases. The warmth spreads through the front room, then the hall, then the staircase that has not felt footsteps in decades. The house is not awakening. It is exhaling as she senses it, though she does not name it. Her shoulders loosen. Her thoughts slow further, dissolving into sensation. The fog thickens around the porch, wrapping the house in a private stillness. You drift with her, your body heavy, your mind quiet. This guided sleep meditation carries you without effort. She stands and moves closer to the door, resting her forehead lightly against the cool wood. The contact is brief, gentle, and filled with an unspoken understanding. She does not ask questions. She does not search for explanations. She allows the moment to be what it is. Inside, the memory shifts again. The woman who waited no longer waits. She does not leave. She does not move on. She simply stops, holding time so tightly. The bell no longer belongs to longing. It belongs to acknowledgement, to presence, to being shin, even across decades. The sound will still come, but now it will come differently. She steps back, pulling her coat closer as the night air cools. Before she turns to leave, she whispers goodnight. The word carries weight, settling into the house like a promise. When she walks away, the fog parts for her, then closes again, sealing the quiet behind her. The house remains wrapped in memory that no longer aches. The bell does not ring again that night, and as this part of the story softens and fades, allow your breathing to slow even more. Let images blur, sounds dissolve, and thoughts drift away like mist at dawn. You are safe. You are resting. The night is listening gently. As you slip deeper into peaceful sleep, morning arrives without announcement. The town wakes the way it always has, with muted engines, soft footsteps, and windows opening one by one. Nothing appears different at first, yet beneath the ordinary rhythm, something subtle has shifted, like a clock resetting itself by a single quiet second. The house stands unchanged at the end of the road. Its porch is empty. The bell hangs still, and yet the air around it feels lighter, less held. The waiting that once pressed against its walls has thinned, not vanished, but eased. She doesn't come that night. The house notices this too, though not with disappointment. Absence, after all, is something it knows well. But this absence feels different. It is not abandonment. It is continuation, a pause that belongs to movement rather than loss. Inside, memory settles more deeply into place. The hallway cools. The warmth fades gradually, like embers dimming at dawn. The house rests. You rest as well, drifting comfortably, your body sinking further into stillness as the story flows around you. This sleep story does not hurry. It trusts the night to carry you. When she returns to evenings later, the fog is gone. The sky is clear, stars scattered thinly overhead. The moon hangs higher than before, its light pale and steady. She walks with the same calm steps, but her posture has changed slightly. She is not seeking the quiet now. She is bringing her own. The bell does not ring at midnight. Time passes, the street lamp hums. An owl calls from somewhere beyond the trees. She waits, but without expectation. She breathes slowly, evenly, her presence soft against the night. Inside the house, memory stirs again, but differently this time. It does not rise forward. It recedes gently, like a tide pulling back from shore. The woman who once waited no longer presses against the walls. She has loosened her hold on the hours. The bell remains silent. She noted, and instead of concern, a small smile touches her face. She understands, without understanding why. Some sounds are meant only for certain moments. This one has already done its work. The house listens to the quiet that follows, discovering that silence, too, can be shared. Over the next nights, the town begins to feel the change, though no one names it. People sleep a little more deeply. Dreams linger longer in the morning. The edge of unease that once hovered near the old road fades, replaced by a sense of completion no one can explain. The house no longer rings the bell each night. When it does ring, it is brief, gentle, almost kind. You feel this gentleness now, spreading through the story, through your breathing, through the space between thoughts. The narrative softens, inviting you further inward. She continues to visit, though less often. Sometimes she sits. Sometimes she only pauses at the gate, resting her hand against the wood before turning back. Each visit leaves a trace, not of disturbance, but of balance. Inside the house, the rooms settle into themselves. The front room releases its echo. The staircase forgets the weight it once remembered. The bell, freed from its role as a marker of waiting, becomes simply what it is. A sound, a memory, a signal that once mattered deeply and now rests on one quiet night. She does not come at all. The house does not listen for her. It listens instead to the wind moving through the trees, to the distant town breathing in its sleep, to the slow turning of time. It listens without needing to be heard. You drift deeper now, thoughts dissolving into sensation into rest. The story carries you gently toward stillness. The house stands, calm and complete, its midnight ringing no longer a question, but a memory held softly, without pain. And as this part of the story fades, allow your mind to loosen its hold. Let the images blur, the sounds quiet, the night carry you further into peaceful, unbroken sleep. The bell rings one final time without intending to. There is no wind strong enough to claim it, no hand to set it swaying. The sound comes softly, as though the night itself has exhaled and brushed against the metal in passing. It is brief, gentle, almost uncertain, and then it fades, leaving the air smoother than before. The house does not cling to the sound. It does not echo it. It lets it go. Inside, the last of the memory loosens its shape. The woman who once waited no longer stands in the hallway or lingers near the door. She does not move away. She simply settles, becoming part of the structure itself, not as longing, but as calm. Her presence thins into something like warmth held within the walls, indistinguishable from the house's own quiet endurance. You feel this release as well, a soft untying inside the chest, a deepening of breath, a gentle heaviness behind the eyes. This bedtime story guides you toward rest without asking you to follow every detail. It allows you to drift. The town sleeps through the final ringing. No windows open, no lights flicker on. Dreams continue uninterrupted. Whatever unease once circled the old road has dissolved into the larger rhythm of night. The house is no longer a question waiting to be answered. When she returns again, days later, the porch feels different beneath her feet. Solid, complete. She pauses, sensing the change immediately. Though she cannot say what has changed, the bell hangs still above her, quiet and unremarkable, like any other forgotten detail of an old place. She does not wait for midnight this time. She sits only a moment, breathing in the night air, listening to the silence that feels fuller than sound. She understands now that she was never meant to fix anything here. She was meant to witness, to listen without demand, to allow what remained unfinished to find its own ending. The house receives her presence one last time, gently, without holding it. Memory does not rise again. There are no impressions, no warmth, no shifting air, and yet the calm feels deeper than ever, rooted rather than fleeting. This is not absence, it is rest. She stands and walks away without looking back. The house does not listen for her footsteps. It listens to the night beyond itself, to the slow passing of hours, to the steady breathing of the land. The bell, now free of its purpose, rests completely still. You drift even further now, thoughts thinning, the story's edges softening. This relaxing story becomes less narrative and more sensation, guiding you gently downward. The house remains as it always has, weathered and quiet, but no longer burdened by the need to be heard. It has said what it needed to say. It has been answered in the only way that mattered. Time moves forward. Seasons will pass. Snow will gather on the porch. 10 melt, hour. Leaves will return and fall again. The house will stand through it all, neither haunted nor forgotten, simply present, and somewhere, deep within its walls, a bell remembers how to be silent. As this part of the story fades, allow your breathing to slow even more. Let your body sink fully into rest. There is nothing left to resolve, nothing left to wait for. The night learns how to hold the house without asking anything from it. There is no ceremony, no moment that marks the ending as something important. The house simply exists within the dark, steady, and unremarkable, as though it has always known how to be this way. The bell hangs quietly above the door, unmoving, its surface dulled by years of weather and time, its purpose complete. The road remains empty. Somewhere beyond the trees, the town breathes in sleep. Curtains stir gently. Lamps glow faintly in distant windows. Dreams unfold without interruption, untroubled by echoes or unanswered sounds. The old unease that once brushed against the edges of midnight has softened into memory, and memory itself has thinned into rest. Inside the house, rooms settle into their true shapes. The front room no longer waits for lamplight. It rests in shadow, content with darkness. The hallway stretches without remembering footstep. The staircase holds no weight at all. Even the doorway, once a threshold between longing and silence, feels ordinary now, just wood and hinge and frame. The woman who once waited is no longer separate from the house. She is not a figure, not a presence that lingers or watches. She has become something quieter than that. She is the warmth the walls hold after a long summer day. She is the way the air feels calm, even when storms pass nearby. She is the reason the house no longer listens for sounds it cannot control. Nothing has been lost. Everything has been set down. You feel this settling too, a gentle descent within yourself, as though each breath carries you deeper into comfort. Muscles loosen without instruction. Thoughts drift without shape. This guided sleep meditation does not lead you anywhere. It allows you to arrive. Midnight passes unnoticed. No bell rings to mark it. No sound asks to be heard. Time moves forward quietly, as it always has, unconcerned with endings or beginnings. Seasons will come. Snow will gather on the porch, soft and undisturbed, then melt into the soil beneath. Spring rain will darken the wood and wash the dust from the road. Leaves will return, then fall again, blanketing the steps in gold and rust. Through it all, the house will stand, unchanged in the ways that matter. People may pass it someday. They may pause, glance toward the porch, notice the bell hanging still. Some may feel a faint calm they cannot explain, a sense that this place has already finished telling its story. Others may not notice it at all. But I find the house no longer needs to be remembered. It has remembered itself. Your breathing is slow now, deep and effortless. The story has softened into sensation, into warmth and quiet and ease. There is no image left to hold, no sound to anticipate, only rest. The night continues, wide and patient, holding everything without demand. And as the final traces of the story fade, allow yourself to drift fully into sleep, knowing that nothing is waiting, nothing is unfinished, and nothing needs to call out into the dark again. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep,